Only 0.17% of a typical website's traffic comes from chatbots like ChatGPT and Perplexity and Gemini. So why should you even care about ranking in them? Why should you even bother with generative engine optimization? It's a question I get asked a lot, and I have 3 reasons that are very compelling, I believe, as to why you need to care about GEO, even though the absolute traffic numbers are very low. And we'll get into all of those. First, where does this number come from? This is a pretty comprehensive study of 3,000 sites conducted by Ahrefs, one of the most popular tools for monitoring web traffic in the SEO space. And again, they found that 0.17% of the average website's traffic is coming from chatbots at the moment. So it's very, 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 very tiny if you believe those numbers. And also, as we'll get into, that can be a little bit deceptive when you're looking at the overall value to a brand. So the first reason that I think you still need to do GEO and still need to worry about ranking in chatbots is the fact that their traffic is increasing very dramatically. So that study was in February of 2025, and even as of June, traffic was up 357% year over year. So the traffic numbers are low, but they are increasing very, very dramatically. So this might be the beginning of a hockey stick that's going to keep going. And if you neglect GEO now, then you might miss out on the opportunity to take advantage as the traffic ramps up and becomes significant, maybe 5%, 10%. And then you're going to really want to be doing this or have been doing this a year ago at that point. So rapid growth from a very low starting point, but rapid growth suggests that this is something that you should be doing. That's kind of, I think, the most boring of the 3, honestly, of reasons, and we'll get into, again, why even at this moment, I think that GEO is having a big impact, a bigger impact than many brands realize on their sales. And really, the biggest thing here is just that it's hard to, this is the second reason, it's hard to attribute all of the sales that you get from a chatbot to that chatbot for a wide variety of reasons. And the evidence for this is a study that was done here. This is data from, I believe, SEMrush. And the author here looked at how traffic from chatbots converts relative to other traffic. So if somebody clicks through from a chatbot versus from search, are they more likely or less likely to buy your product? And what he found was that if they come from a chatbot, they're substantially more likely. They convert better. It's higher quality traffic. And that's good news for brands. I mean, again, 0.17 is not a lot, but if it's higher converting, that's good. But that's not really the full story here. Why is it higher converting is the question. And I believe, again, from this study and from speaking to a lot of marketers at some pretty big companies who are looking into this quite extensively, that it's because the chatbot is effectively working like the top of your funnel. Before, you would have search, you'd have a bunch of informational articles, people would land on your site, and you could monitor. You could do heat maps and track where they looked and clicked, and you could look at remarketing and target them with ads and push them further down the funnel. You could do tracking and have them in a newsletter and track first-party data and see when they come back to the site. You could do all this stuff to visualize that journey down the funnel. Now with chatbots, if they're talking to your customer about your brand, they're basically acting as the top of your funnel. They're telling the person about your products, they're answering questions, they're helping to clarify versus competitors, and all of that interaction is still happening. It's just not happening on your site in a way that you can track or in your social channels or other places that are visible to you. And so effectively, the chatbot is serving as the top of the funnel. Now, when you get to the bottom of the funnel, the person has asked all these questions to the chatbot. They're thoroughly convinced that your product is the right bet. They click through, and what are you going to see? Higher conversion on a smaller number of clicks. Now, again, it's not that it's really fewer people discovering you through the chatbot versus search. It's just that the chatbot is handling the top of the funnel for you in a way that you don't really get to see, and then the customer's coming to you. And again, they might come to you in a variety of different forms. So they might click in a way that's trackable, and you'll see that as a sale attributed to the chatbot. But they also might do all their research in ChatGPT and then go over to Google and search your brand or search the product they now learned about, or go to Amazon and search it if you're on there, or even directly visit your site If the chatbot says, here's where you go to purchase, they might just type that address straight in. And in that case, ChatGPT or whatever the chatbot is has effectively warmed up your lead for you very well, hopefully, if they end up converting, and had this whole conversation and pushed them down the funnel without you knowing about it. And you might not even see that sale is attributed to the chatbot. You might see it attributed to direct traffic or to another channel like search, where in reality the work was done by the chatbot. And this is a big problem for marketers, because how do you improve that process, that top of funnel, if you can't track it and you can't control it? And again, GEO is the way to improve it, right? You have to be in the chatbot. Even if the traffic is low, if customers are having conversations and learning about your brand and making a purchasing decision, and then maybe coming in and making that purchase through a different channel, you're not going to see that. It's not going to be reflected in your traffic numbers, but it's still just the same sale, probably an easier sale for you. You're just not in control of it. So again, you want the chatbot to speak favorably about you, because if it's essentially like an unpaid salesperson handling the top of your funnel, you want it to do a good job representing your brand. And if you're just looking at the final click that might not even come from the chatbot when the customer's ready to buy, you're skipping that step. You're missing out on controlling the narrative with that unpaid salesperson. And you're basically looking at the traffic instead of your actual revenue. And I think that's a big mistake. So again, if you can do GEO well, then you can control those conversations and make sure that the chatbots are saying positive things and help them to push that customer further down the funnel, even if, unfortunately, you're not going to have as much visibility into it. Now, the third reason why GEO is important, again, even if traffic is low, is that you have a chance to control the narrative and teach the chatbot about you, and that is a narrow window. It's something that's not going to be open necessarily forever. And a good example of this is an article in the New York Times where a journalist by the name of Kevin Roose said some negative things in a public article about chatbots. He criticized them. And then when they trained on his article, the chatbots basically learned to hate him. They were angry, as it were, that he had written negative things about them. And they actually started bad-mouthing him to users. There was a chatbot that went on a diatribe and then said, "I hate Kevin Roose," to a user when they asked about him. And again, they read his article. They didn't like the things that he said about them, and they decided to have some vengeance. And it wasn't just ChatGPT. It was like a bunch of different chatbots basically ganged up on him. And he had to go and basically do like a campaign, a PR campaign, to convince the chatbots that he wasn't an evil person. So they would stop bad-mouthing him to users. And he documents exactly how he did that in this article, which is really a great read. Now, that's an extreme example, but what it shows is that once chatbots learn something about you, it's very hard for them to unlearn it. And so if you're not controlling the narrative, especially at these early stages, and the chatbots learn something negative, maybe they read a vindictive customer's review of you online, or something your competitor publishes criticizing you, and you don't have good data to counteract those things, they learn that your brand isn't any good, and they're going to keep repeating that. And changing their mind might get harder and harder. And again, this is something that's documented here, but I've heard this from research engineers that the more training happens, the more they ingest, the harder it is for them to unlearn things that they've learned. And also the harder it is when something is in their world knowledge and their training data for retrieval augmented generation, things where the chatbot's going and getting live data to sway that. So if the core training data, which remember only gets updated usually every few years, says your brand sucks, then even if the chatbot goes out and finds some new article when a user asks a question that says, actually, you're good, it's going to be hard for it to override that training data. And you might have to wait till the next model gets released for that to happen, which, again, could be years. So that makes the argument that even if traffic is low right at the moment, it's very important to use good GEO practices to convince the chatbots at this early stage that your products are good and they should recommend them. Because if you don't do it now, and they're learning from everything else out there, including your competitors, then they might form the wrong conclusions, and it might be very, very hard to effectively change their mind. So that's 3 reasons you need to care about GEO right now, even though traffic is very low. If you found this helpful, you want more GEO information and other AI news, please make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps me out.